down and listen to records. Smell the cover, read all the verses. Tell me about your favorites on Vinyl and Vision.
Hey folks, thanks for tuning in to the latest episode of Vinyl and Vision. Here we are with episode 122. Today's very special guest is Laura Larson. I'm going to try to get through this kind of quick because I don't want to take too long here. But Laura Larson hails from Minneapolis, Minnesota. Absolutely wonderful songwriter. She's currently in the band Scrunchies. They are releasing a brand new record called Colossal. Comes out on August 23rd on Learning Curve Records. It is currently in vinyl pre-order status, I'm pretty sure. It will also be available on CD and cassette, I think, too, actually. And digital, of course. So I will provide links to all those things if you're interested in picking up a copy. I encourage you to do so because it's a great record. I'm going to glaze over the fact that this album is one of the last albums that was recorded by Steve Albini. That being said, whole ball of wax there to unravel and to get into, which I get into in our conversation. So I'm not going to explain too much about that now, but Steve Albini is a massive, incredible force of nature in the hard rock music, punk rock, noise rock, whatever the fuck you want to call it, genre. And we lost him recently, and it's a tragic, fucking devastating loss for all of us. And yeah, so we do talk about that. It's in there. I won't go into crazy detail now. But what you're listening to is the first single off of this album, The Empire. At the end of the episode, I'll include a short clip of another song, the second single off of this album, called High Pile. So it was a great honor for me to speak with Laura because she's a great and very talented songwriter. I've listened to just about everything she's recorded, and it's all goddamn great. Seriously. I mean, like, it's so hard to be able to say that honestly about anybody that has a long career and like lots of music and a lot of projects. It's just the truth. That's all I can say. I'll provide links to everything. Check it all out. The topic of discussion tonight, Bikini Kill Huggy Bears, 12-inch split, Our Troubled Youth. Very difficult record to talk about. If you know it at all, you probably know why. If you don't know it, it's because, very, very short summary, both bands were having media blackouts at the time that this record was released. So they weren't saying shit about it. And it's very clear. So did my best I could with the information that I could find. And it turned out to be a great conversation. Actually, Laura was great. I really had a great time speaking with her. She was super awesome to speak with. And I think that shows. And if you like the kind of conversation we've had here and any conversation that I have had or will have, please do all the things you do with the internet is what we asked, is that you like, share, subscribe, comment, rate, review, all of those things, please. They help us out immensely. They cost you nothing. If you do care to throw us a couple of bucks, we don't do that. We don't just have a handout, for you to throw stuff in there. But we do sell records online. You can always buy a record. It helps us out. We put out records, Hammer Party, Narnia. Those are a couple of acts so far that we put out. And any of those purchases help us out immensely. They help keep this thing rolling. So please do that. And we thank you very much. Enjoy. Hi, Laura.
Hello. Hi, James.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm okay. It's nice to see you. Thanks for doing this.
Of course.
I guess like maybe the first thing I'd like to say is just that I really love the new album.
No,
It's
thanks.
Yeah, it's pretty kick-ass. I mean, to be completely honest with you, I've never I didn't know about you prior to Curran sending your information to me. And then I listened to the album and I was just like, absolutely, I want to speak with her. And then I listened to everything you have out that's recorded right now. I've listened to all of the Scrunchy records, the Kitten Forever records. I've listened to, what's that other band called?
Baby Guts.
I listened to Baby Guts and
Cadet was my other one.
Cadet, was that?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I listened to everything and your
Oh my
solo
God.
record.
Oh God, thank you.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm on Laura Larson overload right now.
Nice. So am I. It's insane. Oh,
I was gonna say, it's just what's do you want to tell me the secret to songwriting? Because obviously you do a ton of it and you do it well.
uh, oh, thank you. Gosh, the secret to songwriting for me, I don't know. It's a drive that I have that I don't have a choice, honestly.
Yeah.
Like it feels like it's something I have to do and I've always had to do. I've been writing songs since I was like an actual child. I don't know. Sometimes, it'll be easy to just kind of sit down and hear something in my head and kind of like pull it out and make it a song. Other times, something will just kind of roll around with me for months and finally I'll pull it together at the last minute, like right before we record, which, happens not totally infrequently. So yeah,
Yeah.
it kind of just feels like it's just been a part of my life for so long that it doesn't even feel like a thing that I have to totally think about. It's just
Right.
um it's a way that I move through the world and kind of always has been.
Huh. Okay. And so you've been writing for how long, would you say?
I first started playing guitar when I was 14 or 15 years old. I started around the same time as my best friend Angie, who is still playing music in the Minneapolis music scene as well. She's in a band called Big Salt and another band called Spit Takes. And they're both really fantastic bands. She's actually like a phenomenal musician and guitar player. And the two of us started playing guitar at the same time when we were around 14, 15. And we were really into Nirvana and we started a band together when we were really young called Fetus Farm. So
Okay.
that was an all-girl kind of rock punk band when we were still like younger teenagers. So I've been writing like full songs like that since that age, but I definitely had notebooks as a child that had, really cringy lyrics that in my mind were songs, but I didn't know quite how to translate them into instruments and
Mm.
vocal melodies and choruses and verses and all of that.
Right. Okay. Um, so well maybe let's go back from there. Were you born and raised in Minneapolis, was it, right?
Yeah. I was born and raised in a suburb of Minneapolis called Burnsville. It's about 15 minutes south of the city. It was when I was a really little kid, it was still really underdeveloped, and so I grew up on the edge of a cornfield. Now it's like a metropolitan city, basically. It's super diverse and there's a lot of there's more culture in Burnsville now than there was when I was growing up. I'm not saying it's by any means cultured, but it's definitely
Getting better.
beyond just yeah, it's beyond just the Burnsville Mall that we just spent our entire teenage years at. So yeah,
Hmm.
grew up in the suburbs.
Oh, okay. And so what was
Yeah.
that like growing up in your house? Were your parents together or did you have siblings?
I have a younger sister that is 3 years younger than I, and my parents stayed together until I was 24 when they got divorced.
Oh, that's
So
nice of them to
yeah,
do that for you.
oh yeah, isn't that sweet? Just, even if you don't totally love your marriage, you might as well just stay in it until the kids are well out of the house.
Right.
But yeah, they just kind of real working class blue collar family. Like my mom worked part-time retail jobs and my dad worked at a factory. So that's just kind of, what my upbringing was like out there. Really conservative family growing up. We went to church twice a week,
Hmm.
which, I have good and bad feelings about. Like I met Angie, my best friend at the time we learned how to play music together. I met her through church. I met some really good friends in, youth programs through the church. But
Hmm.
it it really, you know, colored a lot of growing up, but it also was a really good introduction to music and being in choir and performing in church plays and being a part of a community.
Hmm.
Despite what I think about religion and church and all of that stuff now, I really do think that there was some good in it for me growing up.
Yeah. Is that
Even though
where
it
like where
was,
you
you
got
know,
started in music? Because I mean, you're saying obviously that, there was a lot of like musicality that was coming through it. Like, is that where
mhm.
you kind of got your start?
I would say yeah, probably. I think it was that and a combination of I think I've always been a pretty musically inclined person. I grew up with my parents listening to the oldies station in the car all the time. And so my musical upbringing was, like the Beatles and the Beach Boys and the Hollies and,
Hmm,
stuff like that with really, melodic poppy stuff and then kind of merging into stuff like the Animals and almost getting into the early psych rock kind of genre, but
sure.
just having you know Sam Cooke in my ears as a as a little kid, it's like that stuff just kind of follows you forever, and I have those feelings of being on a road trip vacation with my family when I'm really young and hearing sitting on the dock of the bay and just feeling like when I hear that song now, just transported back to like I like know the feeling that I had being in a hot car driving around in the summer, like listening to this. And so it feels like those things have always just been, you know, almost not optional in my life. They're just like so built into
Yeah.
everything.
Okay. Well, I mean, so aside from that, like what your parents listening to the radio and stuff, I mean, what is like your memories of music in the household? Like were your parents like music purchasers? Like did they buy records or CDs and
Yeah. No, not at all. They were not music connoisseurs at all.
it was
I
just the
think
radio?
it was just the radio in the car. And I honestly don't even know if they were like particularly excited about listening to it. It was just kind of what you did. You just get in the car and you turn on the radio. But
Yeah.
my I think the only vinyl we had when I was growing up, or the only CDs or anything like that, were like Amy Grant, Christian superstar Amy Grant,
Hmm.
and my mom really liked the Carpenters. And so whenever there was a cleaning day at the house, like Saturday, put on the Carpenters and start scrubbing the floors kind of thing. So for a really long time, I had just a total aversion to the Carpenters,
Sure.
just because it was so associated with like, it's cleaning day or whatever. But I
Yeah.
have grown to really like the Carpenters now. So.
Sure. Yeah. Well, so then when do you think like you started developing an affinity or an ear for music?
Mhm.
Like when did you want to
Mhm.
start listening to something on your own or did somebody turn you onto something that, kind of like changed things for you?
Yeah. Um, I can, f- I, f- I think the very first time that I felt a visceral, like almost physical reaction to music was a tape that I had that was put out by Disney called Minnie and Me. And it was a narrative tape that was about a girl in a neighborhood who had a slumber party with her friends. And it's a two-sided tape full of the most like, I mean, to this day, like that tape is really beautiful to me. It's like really sweet songs, really good pop melodies, and it was kind of put out in like a almost like a proto what is like like the Disney pop star kids or whatever. It was kind of before the era of our age Mickey Mouse Club kids like Justin Timberlake and stuff. It was a little bit before that.
Oh, okay.
But it had these really beautiful songs on it, and I just wore the tape out, and that was one of the first times that I think, especially listening to something that was really based in like girls doing things for themselves and making their own world special and all of this stuff. So I don't know. It's kind of hard to explain because it's like, well, this Disney tape for kids was really
Yeah.
impactful to me, but it really was. It's a really defining moment in my
Yeah.
musicianship and like how I related to music. And
Okay.
there's been a few things like that, like that one. And then a number of years later, when Spice Girls put their album out, I just played that into the ground and was
Spice
totally
World?
obsessed with it. Yeah, yeah, or no, before Spice World, their first album was
Oh,
just
okay.
this, it's called Spice. And
It's just
so
Spice. Okay. Right.
yeah, and so that I just, that was like forget it. Like that was just everything to me, and it still is. I mean, I those songs are amazing still.
Mm,
They're really well written pop songs. They're very fun and touching and funny, and
mm.
yeah, I don't know. Those two I think were pretty defining musical
Well,
moments for me.
and how old would you say you were when you found that Mini and Me tape?
Oh gosh, I was probably like 5 or 6, something
Oh,
like
okay, so
that, like
really little.
really little. And then the Spice Girls album came out when I was 10. So
Okay.
yeah.
Huh, okay. So that's pretty formative, I would say,
Yeah.
in relation to your age. But
Hmm.
so then obviously I've listened to all of your music. All of it tends to be pretty mean and angry sounding. So when did
Hmm.
things kind of go in that direction for you? Like when did it
Hmm.
start to turn aggressive?
Yeah. I think when s- I think when I discovered musicians and bands who were not masculine creating angry music. I think of, the first time I heard Territorial Pissings by Nirvana. I was probably in sixth grade, fifth grade or sixth grade. And I at the time I didn't have the language to say like this is not a misogynistic band who's like aggro and talking, using lyrics that are really like violent.
Hmm.
And I think I could pick up on the idea that you can have this anger and you can have this aggression that can be expressed in this really beautiful way that isn't about perpetuating violence or perpetuating, sexism or racism or anything like that. You can pull those emotions out and validate them without making them I guess like evil. It's really easy to kind of align anger with menace or with uh, you know, unworthiness or I don't want to be around that person. They're angry. But I think knowing that there were these examples of people who were righteously angry about things and
Hmm.
were able to express them in a way that made me feel really excited and like passionate, I think that's where this sort of like anger, I say that in quotes, anger kind of was sprouted for me. And I without going too far down like a therapy rabbit hole, I was not a very happy kid. Like I didn't have a really great home life. And so music to me was the thing that was more of an escape and more of a way that I saw emotions expressed outwardly that was not damaging to myself or others or
Hmm.
um you know was a way to get some of the stuff out of me that I thought was going to be stuck in me forever. So
Right.
yeah.
Okay. Well, so then, so is it fifth and sixth grade around then, like when you start buying your own music, and is that when you start buying like rock music, CDs or albums?
Yeah, I mean it was probably a little bit later than that. I think the first like rock album that I bought for myself was Americana by The Offspring.
Okay.
And that was, I mean that was just kind of like what was out at the time, but it kind of it pinged that same thing for me. I think a lot of my formative years of getting into rock music and getting into culturally being really immersed in what rock music meant. I was at the age when nu metal was like super, super popular. When I was, you know, probably 13, 14. And so I hate to say it, that had a pretty big impact on me. And that's
No,
kind
that's
of like
fine.
this weird, I mean, it's okay. I mean, that's
It
just
makes
what
sense.
we were in a monoculture at the time. The internet wasn't the way it is now. You couldn't really discover things um in the sense that everything's kind of very accessible, to folks now. And I think when you're 13 and you're living in the suburbs and you turn on the TV and there's Fred Durst singing break stuff and you're like angry and sad all the time and you can't really
Yeah.
figure out why, you don't really know, You don't really know why, but you want to justify ripping someone's head off. Sorry, that's the lyric for that song.
No, that's fair. I get
Um,
it.
it you connect with it just because it's there, you know? And so I think I went through like a cringy phase of like, oh, I'm into corn and the biscuit for a little
Oh,
bit, and then
sure. We all
really
did.
quickly evolved out of that. I give myself some grace with it.
Yeah,
That
of
was
course.
the nature of the beast at the time. But
It's all relative to kind of who you are and who you become,
yeah,
and especially as a musician, like what you end up kind of creating. It's all in that pot that kind of helps create what you make. Um,
totally. Yep.
it's yeah, it can be embarrassing, but everyone's got that. I mean, I talked
Mhm.
to the folks in Heat Death about
Oh, I love
System of a
them.
Down's Toxicity.
I
You
mean,
know,
that album slaps. Like, that's a good choice.
it's a pretty good one. But see, at the
Yeah,
time, for me, because I'm a little older, their first album was the one that really hit for me.
sure.
And
Yeah.
so when I was doing the research for that, I listened to both, obviously, but then I went back to the first one being like, I remember this record. And
Hmm.
then that one kind of brought all the feels back. I mean, Toxicity, I had already kind of like was morphing out of, the mainstream rock stuff by that point. So
Hmm.
I didn't really catch much of that one. So,
Yeah.
but still
I
good.
it is. And I remember when that came out, and that was, I mean, that was like a ride. I think for me that was like, how can people make music like this? This is insane. Like, yeah, but
Right.
yeah, it's a good one.
Okay. Well, so I'm sorry. So going back to your first record that you bought being The Offspring, I
Hmm.
guess. Okay,
Yeah.
so now you're getting into punk music, it seems.
Hmm. Yep.
Um
Yeah. Yep. And so I think Offspring were probably like the first, I don't know, mainstream at the time kind of pop punk band that I got into. And I
yeah.
think that was kind of like a definitive roadway for a lot of folks where they could have gone down, Rancid and Operation
Yeah.
Ivy and stuff like that. I didn't necessarily go that route. I went the like Nirvana and then subsequently into Hole and Bikini Kill and
Right.
I kind of really immediately after that, Jack Off Jill, which was this riot goth band that existed in the
Hmm.
kind of mid 90s. They were on Marilyn Manson's record label, and they were kind of a really defining band for me in that like they showed a very feminine version of the anger that I was trying to access, or
Hmm.
that I felt, within me. And so I think they had an album called Clear Heart, Gray Flowers that just totally like broke my brain in terms of like what I wanted to do and like what I wanted to be. And that was like a very defining CD that I owned. And my mom snapped it in half because she thought it was satanic. So, I
Oh,
think there's kind of a bunch of layers with all of that. But
let's see. Yeah, well,
yeah.
that's a tough sell. I mean, Jack Off Jill, that's what it was called, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a tough one for a
Yeah.
parent to kind of like swallow, being like, I don't know if
Yeah.
my kid should this be exposed to this.
I know. But mom, you just don't get it. It's cool.
Of course, I know, I know.
Yeah.
I oddly enough haven't had that experience yet. I've been trying to give all these bad things to my kids, and they're just like, we don't want to have anything to do with this.
You got to let them find it themselves first. And
I
then you got
guess
to
so.
pretend like you're like, no, no, no. And then off to the side, you're like, yes, they did it.
Yeah, well, they don't like anything I like. I
No,
mean, like,
what's
I
that
don't mind what
about?
they like. Like, what they like is fine. Like, but it's just not
What
anything.
are they liking? What are your kids liking right now?
My oldest is getting into like, well, he likes like weird electronic music. I mean, for the most part, he likes things that seem kind of like soundtrack like video game music type of style stuff, like so it's kind
Mhm.
of like I don't know a good way to describe it, but he has gotten into like Kanye West recently,
Oh,
and I was just
interesting.
like, I don't really know if I
Yeah.
like that so much.
Yeah.
He got into MGMT, which was actually kind
Oh,
of
that's
cool.
fun. Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Cool.
So I bought one of those. I bought their new record for him actually. But yeah, aside from that, not too much. Not
Yeah.
too much that really stands out.
Yeah.
Um, but let's see. So punk rock as a young teen or maybe budding teen, uh, the album you chose, Bikini Kill and Huggy Bear's Split.
Hmm.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Our Troubled Youth. When did you get that, and what was that experience like?
Hmm. Um, I think I got this split album when I was in my late teens. I got it at a cheapo record store, which is a local record store chain here in Minneapolis. And they used to have, I mean, they still do. There's at least one shop still around, but they just had bins and bins of used records. And I had already known about Bikini Kill and maybe even Huggy Bear when I got this album. And I just, it's that super exciting moment of going through a used bin and finding something that you really want and it's like
Hmm.
$6, so I have just a really strong memory of like pulling it out of the bin and being like, oh my God, they have this split here, like this is so exciting.
Yeah.
um but it had certainly been after I had heard at least Bikini Kill and had been a fan of theirs already, and so either this split was my introduction to Huggy Bear or their actual CD, Taking the Rough with the Smooch, might have been. But I think the combination of these two on this vinyl was thrilling because it, one, was the first time that it showed me that like two bands that I really love can actually just put a physical thing out together. That wasn't really
Hmm.
something I had seen before.
Yeah.
And then also to just have, you know, two like similar enough but very disparate voices on both sides of this album, and having it, you know, be a collaboration that was between an American band and a European band um was, just I think even at the time really mind-blowing because it just didn't again, it wasn't something I'd ever really seen like that before. And so being able to kind of like dive into both sides of it and seeing how each band approached their musicianship and each band approached their songwriting kind of in this one package was really exciting to me. And both bands were like wildly impactful to me as I was like actually getting into physically playing music and kind of identifying my own politics and how I wanted to sing and how I wanted to be writing and the sounds I wanted to make and the way I wanted to sing and all of that stuff.
Hmm. Okay. And I forget, how old were you when you found it, did you say?
I was probably late teens, so
Late
like
teens.
somewhere 17, 18, something
Okay.
like that. Yeah.
Huh. That's cool. I guess you were kind of like moving towards this kind of realization about, the ability that music can have, I guess, right? Like,
Mhm.
as a budding musician, like you hadn't really been in a band by this point, right?
I think by this point I had been in that Fetus Farm band. I definitely did
Okay.
Fetus Farm before I had gotten this album.
Okay.
But it was definitely before, I think it was probably right around the time I was starting Baby Guts because Huggy Bear was a really, I mean Bikini Kill too, but Huggy Bear was a huge influence on
Hmm.
me and Taylor, who was the bass player in Baby Guts, and how we wrote music and how we wanted our vocals to kind of go back and forth, being male and female vocals. And so yeah, I think it was, yeah, when Baby Guts was starting was when I picked this one up.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah, I think I could hear that. Yeah.
Mhm.
Uh, so you said you already kind of knew about Bikini Kill, like where you were already a fan by that point?
Yeah, so when I was in high school, I made friends with Taylor, who was in Baby Guts, and his girlfriend at the time was Corey Harrigan, who was in Kitten Forever with me down the road.
Oh,
And so um she may have been the person who brought a Bikini Kill CD into the car, and like that was, my first introduction to it. But I don't really have a super strong memory of like the very first time I listened to Bikini Kill and I felt this or whatever. But I just think, it again, this is one of those like Nirvana pipeline things where if you listen
yeah.
to Nirvana and you're really obsessed with Nirvana, you read everything that Kurt Cobain has to say about other bands. And one of the other bands that he talked about was Bikini Kill. And so, you know, along with like the raincoats and the slits and all of that stuff, Bikini Kill being on like Kurt Cobain lists was,
Yeah.
I was like, oh, well then I'm gonna listen to that because Kurt Cobain listened to it. And so
Right.
that's, somewhere in that mishmash of that really exciting period where you're getting into like one band and it just explodes into 1,000 bands. Bikini Kill's in there somewhere for me.
Yeah, for sure. That makes sense. I mean, I did the same. I was obsessed with Nirvana too. They were probably
Mhm.
one of the first, like punk bands that I
Yep,
ever was turned on to. And yeah,
totally.
same thing because he was so good at that. I mean, it's just such a great resource to have like a famous musician that you really latch onto and really
Yeah.
admire that just tells you about everything that they love. And yeah, you
Yeah.
just go down those rabbit holes, and it's great.
Yep. And that was when, again, there wasn't social media or the internet to kind of be like, and this is what happens when you run out of this album on Spotify. It starts playing this thing that sounds kind of like it, and then you get into that. And it's, don't get me wrong, I'm thrilled that these like tools exist. I'm not thrilled with Spotify, but I'm
Yeah,
thrilled that these systems exist now. So it's not like, you have to pull your catalog number out of a pamphlet that you find, tucked in the CD case out of the used bin or whatever. But
right.
I mean, Kurt Cobain kind of talking about like all these other bands and uplifting, all these other bands, especially female bands, especially, feminist political ideology focused bands. Really colored the way that I try to approach being a musician now too, where I really want to be able to give credit where credit's due or give props to, a band smaller than ours or a band that's, friends of ours who, are running on a different path than us. I want to give those shout outs and also, recognize that there are elders that came before us that also did this, and it's really important for us to kind of continue that tradition of making sure that we're all kind of, calling each other out in a good way, and
Yeah,
making sure that
sure.
we're all being heard.
Right. Well, I was actually would like to wanted to ask you about that because you're from an area that I am not familiar with. I think music scenes are very interesting. So I kind of wanted to know from your perspective, like what is your music scene like currently and
Mhm.
like how do you feel about it?
Yeah. Our music scene right now is pretty great. I think Minneapolis is a funny place in that, where are you from?
Rhode Island.
Rhode Island. Okay. I'm
Yeah.
trying to think if there's anything around there that I could like compare it to because I've been around the country a few
Well, in
times and
Providence, I mean, like the noise rock scene in Providence is kind of like the biggest and most well-known thing. I mean, starting
sure.
in the 90s, like, obviously we both know Nirvana, so they were on Sub Pop. Six Finger Satellite came from here. They were
Yep.
on Sub Pop, and that
Okay.
was one of the bands that was just like, for them to have been established in this city and to be uh widely kind of proclaiming their I don't know what you want to call it, like their loyalty to this city and the other bands that were coming around up around the time that they were. I mean, there was bands that didn't really get to any level of success. I mean, like Six Finger Satellite was barely successful either. And then, I've
Hmm.
talked to those guys myself, and they're like, we didn't sell any records at all. They were just like living off
Yeah.
of their Nirvana money from Sub Pop, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it was Landed. Currently, there's like Lightning Bolt and Arab on Radar.
Sure.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, not currently. The Arab on Radar doesn't
They're,
exist, but Psychic
yeah.
Graveyard now, and so there's a lot of like those weird noise bands
Hmm.
around here.
Yeah.
Like that's the strongest suit, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we tend to the different areas kind of tend to spit out a lot of, not same sounding stuff, but similar genre or
Yeah.
whatever. And I think, one of the unique things about Minneapolis is that we do have a pretty diverse music scene. And just in terms of, if you go to a punk show, you're not just going to see four punk bands. You're going to see, stuff that sounds a little different, something that's a little more experimental,
Mm.
like a solo project of someone with a loop pedal or something like that. Um, so yeah, it right now it's feeling pretty good. I think it's always hard to kind of zoom out and say like what's the temperature of this scene right now. I think if you're judging in terms of the amount of venues that are around, the amount of bands that are around, what it feels like to go out and see a show. um I think we're in a really good place. I went to 5 shows last week. That is not like a thing that I normally do, but they were just 5 nights of really good music that I wanted to see. And
Yeah,
there's, a bunch of new venues that have popped up over the past couple of years. We've got this new place called Cloudland that just opened.
that's cool.
I'm really, yeah, I'm feeling like we're kind of on the verge of like a really good like Minneapolis musician, or a Minneapolis music renaissance right now.
That's cool.
Um,
Yeah,
and
because
we
there's
have
some
a,
history
yeah.
from there too, right? I mean, like,
Mhm.
is it? Am I thinking of the right place? But it isn't. Weren't the replacements from there? Wasn't Twin
Yep.
Tone from there?
Yep. Replacements, Twin Tone, Husker Du, Babes in
Yeah.
Toyland, which never really get mentioned in those big rocker lists.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You'll
That's
get like
cool.
Semisonic and all of that, and like Bob Dylan or whatever. But Babes in Toyland, that's another like huge influential band, and
Sure.
they made a huge impact at the time as well. And they don't get mentioned quite as often as the rest of those guys, but
Yeah, it's true.
don't
I
know
know.
why. But yeah,
There are those unsung heroes, you know. I
they
mean, like
are.
they're the
Yeah.
ones that were there before or around the same time as L7, which
Mhm.
those two bands, you know, I think probably were the predecessors for most heavy female
Yep.
driven rock. I mean, like a Bikini Kill, obviously, we're
Mhm.
fans of theirs and
Yep.
you know, we're like influenced by them
Hmm.
for sure.
Yep.
So
100%. When Kitten Forever started, when we were kind of like talking about what kind of band we wanted to be, we really were just like, we want to be a disgusting L7 type band. Like we want to just like be really grungy and just, be kind of like nasty and like whatever. And it evolved into what Kitten Forever is, which is, kind of that, but also just cute, cute and fun and
yeah,
party girls or whatever.
yeah,
But yeah,
right,
I mean, everyone wants to be L7. Have you seen them? They're amazing.
yeah.
They're fun. They clearly love each other. They clearly love rocking. Like, yeah,
Mm.
they're great.
They were actually my first show.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah.
that's so awesome. I,
L7, they were right in the middle between Wool, who I don't know where they went
mhm,
off to. They kind of some people know who they are, I don't know. And
yeah.
opening for the Melvins.
Oh, nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
classic.
Yeah.
Classic.
That was my first
I
show.
s-
It was like 97, I want to say.
that's pretty good.
Yeah.
I saw L7 just a couple years ago here in Minneapolis at First Ave, and ooh, they can still really bring a good show. Like that was fun, like so fun.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's not, they are a great band. I think bucket list, I would love to tour with them. I would love to go on, even a short run opening for L7. That would just, oh, that
All
would be
right.
the
We'll see what
dream.
we can do then. Yeah.
Please, thank you.
Of course. Well, so what about Bikini Kill? I mean, so they just reunited recently. So have you seen them yet?
I've seen them a lot. Yeah, I we traveled out to New York when they first did those first two Brooklyn shows when they first reunited, and we got tickets to
Oh,
see both of them. And so
wow.
it
Okay.
was me and the girls in Kitten Forever and Danielle, my drummer in Scrunchies, and we all went out to New York and saw those first two shows. And then since then, I think I've seen them at least one or two other times here in Minneapolis as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're a don't miss kind of band. They're very fun.
Sure, sure. I mean, legends, really.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
So, I mean, what are the chances do you think of trying to get an opening slot for them?
That opening for Bikini Kill was absolutely a dream of mine for a really long time, and I obviously would die to do it. I'd drop everything in a heartbeat. But I think what's really incredible about them is that they're really doing the work in finding local bands in the cities that they're playing that are young, feminist, diverse bands. And I think for me, I almost feel like I've gotten to go on tour with Babes in Toyland with Kitten Forever a few years ago. I've gotten to tour with Built to Spill. I've gotten to play, some shows with some really big bands that mean a whole lot to me. And this almost just feels like a thing that I almost could let go and say like I appreciate what they're doing so much that I almost don't feel like I need that anymore. Like I just want to
Hmm.
see these other bands get to have that experience and get to feel like, oh my God, like this amazing iconic band is having us open for them. Because I
Right.
feel like I've had a little bit of that. I mean, I would obviously say yes and still do it, but
Yeah.
I love that they've got like the Linda Lindas and like Big Joni and stuff like that. So I think
Sure.
good on them. They're finding the bands that are working for them, and I think they're doing it
Yeah.
well.
Well, because I was gonna say, don't you have like a little bit of an in there? Can't you like maybe talk to Sonny about making that happen? Maybe.
Maybe, I don't know. Stuff like that is we could probably be like do a little like please, please, please.
Or just
But
just
I
to
don't. If
pass them the music, just to make sure that the record kind of passes by them so they could just hear it, right? Because it's a
no,
good
yeah,
record, first and foremost.
thanks.
So
Yeah,
secondly, and then, you I think it's something that is in all of us that we want people that inspire us to kind of hear the stuff that we're making that we're proud of so that
yeah,
they can hopefully just acknowledge it. Just know that it's there and just,
yeah.
just hear oh, that was a good job, kid. Like just once
Yeah.
in our life. That would be great.
Oh, totally. Yeah. No, I agree with that. Yeah, it is
Okay.
really nice to get those scene mom pat on the head kind of
Yeah,
thing.
sure.
Yeah.
Um, so let's see. We should probably start talking about this record. I've had a really hard time with this record. Just to let you know.
Yeah.
I don't know if you,
Sorry.
well, I mean, you know a little bit about the history of this record, I imagine.
A little bit, yeah.
Okay. What do you know about Huggy Bear?
Okay, Huggy Bear is a band from the UK. They're
Right.
from Brighton, I believe.
Ah, shit.
They yeah, I
I'm
might be
already
wrong.
stumped.
They are a band that you can't really find too much information about because they intentionally withheld a lot of their information from the mainstream press, including their full names. They
Right.
didn't often get their photo taken. They didn't really do very many interviews, if any. And they had a
Yeah.
really kind of choppy musical career. Like they put out a weird um their first album is really strange and kind of inaccessible, and then they did a handful of 7 inches, the split with Bikini Kill,
Mm.
and then they put out this album that truthfully is almost more defining for me than the actual split is, called Taking the Rough with the Smooch, and it is an album that is it's it has actual songs on it, but then it's interspersed with these spoken word kind of poetry things,
Hmm.
which normally is not really my bag, but it works really well with this album.
Okay.
And so that I think would probably be, despite having spoken word on it, their most accessible album. It's probably their most popular album. And then like a number of years later, they put out a final album that's like a full length called Weaponry Listens to Love that truthfully isn't, it's nothing to write home about, frankly, but
Hmm. Okay.
yeah, so they had a really kind of bombastic existence in the UK for a number of years during the 90s, and then as bands do, just sort of, petered out or whatever. But
Yeah.
they were one of the things that folks might recognize them most from is that they were on The Word, which is that UK kind of like pop late night television show where they had bands play live. Like there's a really good one of L7 playing on The Word.
Oh yeah.
There's one of Nirvana on there.
Yep.
Just iconic stuff, really good. The Huggy Bear one is a total disaster and almost unlistenable. But it's almost unwatchable too, because whoever was editing this thing really loved camera jumps, and just like every beat of the song is like cut, 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 and
Yeah.
it's super hard to watch. And the guitar is just like squealing the entire time, where you like almost can't even hear the vocals because it's just like that ear just splitting screeching noise, and it's
Right.
just chaos. They play badly. It doesn't sound good, but the energy is just so insane that it's just like it just is punk. Like you look at that and you're
Sure.
like, this band is it. Like they know that this is bad, and they're doing it with this intentionality that feels very validating
Yeah.
to a world of perfectionism and you know having everything fall into its place and stuff like that. So
Right. Yeah,
yeah.
very much against the mainstream, like anything else that
Mhm.
you might find on TV. I mean, England was kind of different for that. I mean, like,
Yes.
since the way back, since like the old gray whistle test and stuff, they have been, kind of pioneers of like, introducing interesting music in the rock
Mhm.
realm to the general public. Well, okay, so you understand my frustration with not being able to find a fucking thing about Huggy
Yeah.
Bear. I
Yes.
mean, it was like, I don't know if you know what I do here, but I mean, I do my best to do research about these records and find out any information about them that I can. And there was like nothing,
I
nothing.
left you really, really high and dry here.
Very
Yeah.
much so. Yeah. I mean, and
Yeah.
they did really too. And I don't know. I mean, like, I have to ask like, I just have to,
Rhetorical.
just a random question. I'm not really asking you to answer it, but I mean, do you think Huggy Bear didn't want to be found? Do you think that they wanted to just kind of like just be wiped off of the face of existence?
Okay, I don't think they wanted to be wiped off the face of existence. I think what their mentality was that people are going to misconstrue whatever we say, and so we're going to make our mark by just saying what the music is going to be saying to people and not try to create any sort of persona or image around anything except for what our music is trying to say. I think it was a very
Hmm.
uh anti-establishment, anti individualist way of approaching being an artist. And I
Yeah.
think that's what's really interesting about this split and kind of, you know, with I think the kind of work that you do with this, with this podcast, I think I listened to a few episodes and I'm appreciative of a lot of folks talking about the musicianship and the stylings of these projects. And I think
Hmm.
that what's interesting about this album is that it has this duality between these two bands that existed at the same time that we're saying similar things in very different ways, but also very similar ways. And so I think the
Yeah.
reason I sort of gravitated towards this album, in particular to talk about with you was because the musicianship and the tone and all of this stuff was not necessarily the point of all of it. And so the narrative wasn't the point, but it was
Hmm.
this way of bringing these like really political ideas, these really kind of feminist politics mixed with um two different ways of approaching how these bands are singing about those things. So
Hmm.
I recently read Kathleen Hanna's autobiography. She's the lead singer of Bikini
Yeah.
Kill. She just put
Rebel
out an
Girl.
autobiography. That's great. It's really
Yeah.
good. And there is a line in it, and I actually wrote it down because I wanted to reference it, but she said poetic lyrics are important, but it felt like women hid behind poetry as a way to say something without actually saying it. And I take umbrage with that quote because I think that, especially with this split, it shows that you can have Bikini Kill who are writing really um almost, I mean, they're poetic, but blatant, pretty straightforward
Yeah.
lyrics. And then you
Very
have
much.
Huggy Bear who's writing these like really avant-garde, really surreal, bizarre lyrics that you couldn't
Yeah.
necessarily point to and say, this is a feminist anthem, but it is. It's just
Yeah.
not the kind of feminist anthem that you would expect. And so I think kind of having that juxtaposition of those two bands
Yeah.
um is kind of a cool
Hmm.
angle for this one.
Okay. Well, I'm happy to hear you say that because that's kind of what I focused on.
Oh,
Uh,
great.
because of lack of information, that's kind of really all I had to go on, really. So that was actually the primary focus for me because I noticed that, like, you know, I've never been a fan of either of these bands.
Mhm,
I mean, I've known about Bikini Kill and I've listened, I know I've heard some of it somewhere, but it's never been a band that's really kind of like grabbed me.
mhm,
Um, and Huggy Bear, I certainly knew nothing about. So, as I was getting into some of the research, I listened to this first, and after a few listens, I think that's when it kind of hit me. Whereas it's like Bikini Kill is like, first of all, the sound quality kind of is a little grating, and I
mhm.
think
Oh
that the band
yeah.
will say that themselves. That, like, they don't
Yeah.
talk about this album very much, but
No.
I think what the consensus is that it wasn't really a great production. It was kind of thrown together very quickly.
Mhm.
Um, I would say that it's probably got like a really good demo.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
which it kind of basically was. This album ended up as half of the songs on the CD version of their first two records, which is kind of commonly seen as Bikini Kill's first album, sort of,
yeah,
or their
right.
first full length, I guess. But yeah, it is not auditory
Yeah,
goodness.
it's kind of
It is,
kind of a
it's
sonic
painful.
friggin'
Yep.
I don't know, nightmare really.
Yeah.
But but it comes across, the energy comes across, the message comes
Hmm.
across, and very clearly. I mean, Kathleen Hanna's lyrics are like you were saying, very blatant, and
Hmm.
so for me, as a talking point, I was almost hesitant and kind of like a little intimidated to try to speak about these songs as a man and a woman. I mean, you identify as female, correct?
Hmm. Yeah.
So there's that give and take of like, I need to see things from your perspective, and I want to show you things from my perspective as well, type thing, right?
Hmm.
And I didn't want to have that conversation at all. Like because I'm not, I'm not interested in that. It's just like I feel like that's
Yeah.
just like, I don't know. There's too much there. Um,
It's hard. It's a hard conversation to have.
yeah,
And I, as someone who's been having these conversations for a really long time, it doesn't really get any easier. And I think, we as humans are pretty bad about seeing the gray area in things and about seeing nuance and about giving each other grace.
mm,
I think, and when you get into conversations about feminism, especially ones that are coming with, a cover that looks like this and,
mhm,
lyrics that sound like that and a tone that, feels really aggressive.
right,
I I understand that that's like something that is really difficult to stomach and like to find um a neutral stance of having a discussion about.
right,
And I know that that is not going to be all feminists way of approaching stuff like that. I do know there are going to be some feminists who are like, this isn't even up for discussion, like this is my anger and that's valid enough, in which case that's fine, that's totally
right,
fine with me. I
absolutely,
I think I have the capacity to talk about stuff like that a little more sometimes, and so I'm really comfortable, saying like this album, and in particular the Bikini Kill side, is really aggressive. It is really assertive. It is
mhm,
also saying a lot of things that, I think looking at them in like a really blatant face value way as like actual I, this is a big phrase to say, but like actual threatening remarks, I think kind of like is disingenuous to the meaning behind it, which is that women are under violence all the time, and it is subversive violence, and it is, a violence that isn't totally clear all the time, and it makes you feel crazy and it makes you feel
right,
like you're losing your mind, and that like it must be me, it's not the world, it's me. And so when you have someone who is saying, is expressing the anger that you have in a way that resonates with you in this like passionate way that you would never, necessarily say like, okay, I'm going to take this like, you know, really blatant kind of like rude lyric and just say like, this is my new like brand forever or something. Like,
mhm,
I think you can identify with these things, you can believe these things to like a certain extent too, but I think, what is impactful for people, and in particular women with Bikini Kill, is that she's channeling a feeling and an anger and a sadness and a scarcity mindset and, a fear that exists in all of us, and is pulling that out and making something powerful out of it.
mm,
And I think that's really hard to see if you don't feel all of those things in the same way that she's expressing them. And that's not
right,
to say that you as a man or men or, anyone along the gender spectrum doesn't feel angry or scared or, pissed off or afraid at any moment. Like we're all afraid. Everything is terrifying. We're definitely all scared forever, and it's really
sure,
bad. But
that's true,
I think but I think, the socialization of women is really, it it makes it feel like it's not okay for us to be angry, and it's not okay to have a feeling about these things, and it's not okay to be scared, and it's not okay to, you know, write lyrics that feel really bombastic because we have this perception that we're supposed to be kind and making everybody feel okay and making everybody feel comfortable. And when we're not doing that anymore, it's really hard to, you know, it's hard for people to reconcile with that because and it's not even just like you want women to be docile. It's like I don't think anyone's saying like all women need to be completely complacent and in the kitchen barefoot, but I think with stuff
Right.
like this, it's really hard to be able to express that like this is a valid emotion being expressed,
Yeah.
validated, and it's okay if you don't totally like that or get that, but
Yeah.
that doesn't mean that it doesn't exist.
Oh no, of
So
course not. Yeah,
yeah.
and so I mean, like I said, I'm a sympathizer. So I mean, and to speak a little bit to what you were saying, I mean, uh, I think from the perspective of history, she was closer at the time when she was writing this music to that way of life where you were describing it, like, you know, maybe men were oblivious to all of these things. Like they didn't even acknowledge the fact that they were abusing women, you know, physically or mentally in a way because it was just not they just weren't thinking about it.
Mhm.
So you know, so I get it. I get it. It's just I just don't like politics in general. I just because I feel like they lead to arguments and then and you know, I don't like to argue really. I just
I
kind of
know. I'll say this. I don't like arguing either. I'm a total non-confrontational person. I don't like, you know, causing a stink if I don't have to. Like it always
except
stresses
when
me
you're on
out.
stage, it seems, obviously.
Well, that's where that's where you can express those things and,
Right.
you know, but as far as like, not I don't like politics either, but it's just like what's here. It's what we have to deal with. It's what,
Yeah.
we don't
Right.
have a choice to like ignore it. And so,
Right.
if the world is going to constantly be trying to hold you down and push you down and confuse you or make you afraid, then you have to meet it back with an energy that is coming from a place of positivity and joy. And even if that sounds really angry, I can attest that like not all anger is coming from a like hateful place. And I
Hmm.
think that like is where
Frustration.
a lot, yeah, it's frustration. It's a look at the injustices of the world and the injustices not only happening to ourselves but to each other and to people in other countries, to people within our own country, uh and just looking at that and saying like it's not that I'm hateful towards the people doing, I mean, some of them, it's
Sure.
pretty easy to be
Some deserve
hateful,
it.
but some deserve it. But like that anger is not constantly coming from like, fuck you, like, hey, I hate you. Bleh. It's like
Right.
it's coming from a place of like, I have so much inside me that needs to come out because I see all of this stuff happening and it feels impossible to overcome without standing in front of a microphone and just hollering my head off. And
Right.
so, my old bands in particular really had a lot of all of the press that I've gotten as I've been, coming of age in the music scene and growing up in the music scene have been like, Laura's angry. Laura's so angry. She's so angry. She's yelling, she's screaming, like all of this stuff. But then at the same, in the same article, the title would be what makes Laura Larson scream, or like someone at a show asking me if I was jailbait when I was like, 17 or 18 years old, like playing at a
Hmm.
punk show. And it's just stuff like that. It's like, well, of course there's this anger inside of me, but it's like, this is how I express myself. This is how bands like Bikini Kill have, expressed themselves. And it like really resonates with people who feel these things too. And that's really important to me, is that I think just making sure that other people, especially queer people, especially women, are feeling like that anger is validated and they're not just being crazy.
Yeah. Right. Well, considering we're kind of at this point in our conversation, can I ask you a question? So I found this statement on Bikini Kill's website, and it said that Bikini Kill believed that if all girls started bands, the world would change. They actively encouraged women and girls to start bands as means of cultural resistance. So, in your opinion, like, what do you think that change looks like if they were to succeed?
I think shows would feel safer than they have. I certainly think that shows have felt safer than they used to feel, even in my generation of growing up, going to shows and playing shows. I think that there would be a lot more diversity in terms of the people playing music and who's allowed in and who's not. I think that there would be a lot more community and being able to support each other without feeling like there's only so much of praise or press or anything like that to go around. I think
Mm,
that's a really big thing in the music scene for queer women or queer people and women and people of color too, I think of like, oh,
yeah.
well, this other band made it, and so now we can't. But that's never really a thing for all, bands that are just all men, it never feels like it's a competition of like, okay, who's got the shiny gold star today? Because it's not us. And if
Mm.
it's not us, there's only one band that has it. It feels like there's kind of when there's a scarcity mindset like that, it feels like it's just perpetuated throughout the entire scene, and then it feels like none of us are getting our praise. So I think if there was more girls, if more femmes, more weirdos and queer kids and all of that stuff in the music scene, I have to wonder if that kind of mentality would go away, because it wouldn't feel like, oh, there's still less than 50% of us are doing this. Like, there's only so much elevation that we can get from the projects that we have.
Hmm. Okay. Um, Another kind of point I'd like to kind of get onto is that so I was reading a lot about Bikini Kill and Kathleen Hanna specifically. I read most of her book actually.
Hmm.
Um, so let's see, Kathleen was studying photography at Evergreen State College, and that's kind of where she met the other women that were in her band. So she was experimenting with spoken word poetry, and at the time, she met and interviewed one of her heroes, Kathy Acker,
Hmm.
right?
Yep.
So who at the time says to her that she shouldn't waste her time with spoken word because, quote, no one likes spoken word, but quote, there's more of a community for musicians than writers. You should be in a band. Um, can you tell me if there was someone that inspired you to start making music?
It was I'm honestly, I don't think I'd be playing music if that my friend Angie didn't start playing at the same time as me. I think,
Yeah.
she was my soulmate at the time, and she was the reason why I started playing guitar and why I wanted to get better. I think it was her and Kurt Cobain. I gotta say, like, I think those were the top two where I was like, these are the people influencing me to be in these bands.
Hmm.
I've
Was
certainly had elders as mentors, but there was a youth center that I grew up in, going to, called the Garage in Burnsville. And there one of the women working there was the most like accepting, cool, like women in charge of a youth center that could that could exist. Like, she really shaped how I wanted to play music. She was so encouraging. She wasn't in a band herself. She never really did anything like that, but she saw the potential and the like passion that we had as younger people, and she really made sure that like the path was clear for us to do
hmm.
that.
Oh, cool. Was there something else that you were interested in or wanted to do prior to music? Like if you didn't get into involved in music?
I mean, I've always been a visual artist as well.
Oh, that's
I
right.
do paintings, and I yeah, just other random stuff like that, but none of them have been I didn't go to college. I didn't let it go, I don't have a degree in anything. I don't think that there's anything that I would have done that was different than this, honestly. Like,
Hmm.
there
Okay.
wasn't really a different path that I was going down. I think it was always going to be, having a day job and then being able to play rock music
And make art, all
and make
like
art.
yeah, music,
Yeah.
visual, whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Okay. So you've always just been an artist.
I guess so. Yeah. Yeah.
You're one of those types. That's fine. I've never been to college either. There's nothing else I know really.
Yeah. Yeah. This is what we do, and yeah, I don't have any debt for that. So
Oh,
thank God.
Yeah, right. That's not bad.
Yeah, yeah, not bad at
Um,
all.
so now speaking about this album, the first thing that kind of came to mind as I was doing my research, the kind of thing that was most prevalent was the reminding me about Riot Girl and that whole movement. And this is
Mhm.
obviously, like one of the precursors to that whole movement. Um, and I was wondering, like, do you think Riot Girl is still relevant as like as far as like a movement or a genre or whatever it is like you want to kind of consider that
Mm.
at this point?
Mhm. Yes and no. I think that Riot Girl as a movement is still culturally reverberating throughout the music scene. Like there would be no Kitten Forever, Baby Guts, Cadet, Scrunchies, anything like that without Riot Girl.
Right.
I think that there is a pretty significant cultural backlash to Riot Girl right now, where I think the critiques of it are kind of outshining the positives. And honestly, that's within the scene itself of people that were in the Riot Girl movement too. Like they look back at it and are not totally thrilled with how any of it went. It was, I mean, you look back at these are 20-year-olds like doing like huge, you know, press conferences and being featured on, like in the New York Times for this movement that like was just meant for their small community, and it just totally got out of proportion and
Hmm.
kind of ended up being something bigger than itself. And so something like that, especially something politically minded, it's a beast you can't really control when it gets that big. And so
Right.
I think that there's so many layers to what Riot Girl was and is and how it's perceived now. That that's almost kind of a difficult question to answer because I just don't think it was one homogenous thing. Like if I mean,
Right.
I know we keep talking about Nirvana, but if you ask the question like, do you think Nirvana still has repercussions throughout,
Right.
the music
Well,
landscape now? It's like, well, of course they do, because it's almost like a perfectly preserved time capsule of what music was and can be, and it's
right.
so applicable to everything.
Sure.
It's timeless.
Well,
Whereas,
well, that was considered grunge, and grunge doesn't really exist anymore. But I mean, like you're
right,
saying, there's a reverberation of it, which I
yeah,
believe is true.
yeah,
So, but like as a term, as far as a term is concerned, it's just like it
mhm,
almost doesn't seem relevant.
yeah, it doesn't mean anything anymore. Yeah,
Right.
but
Well, I
yeah,
mean,
I
so
think,
so
yeah.
should there be a new term for like Riot Girl? Because like in the research, I found someone that had said something about girl style. I was just like, that seems
Hmm.
kind of current. That could be a new take on it, maybe.
Hmm. I've never really heard that before. I don't know, because I think, the ultimate difficulty with music is putting a genre on it, right? Like when someone asks you,
Sure.
like, what kind of music do you play? You're like, I don't know, like
Right.
punk, I guess, but like a bunch of other stuff too.
Yeah.
I think a phrase to sum up Riot Girl would it just wouldn't be applicable to anybody that exists right now outside of one band to the next. So, if someone I there was a phrase bubble grunge that was coming up a couple of years ago that I was kind of into, but it
Huh.
was kind of this new, kind of I think we were maybe considered like a bubble grunge band, where I think it's
Yeah.
like heavy music with some like pop elements or something like that.
Right. Very
Um
danceable, very bouncy kind of.
yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Like I just don't know if that was something that was applicable to us, if a band we played a show with would have it be applicable to them. So yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know. I kind of don't think
Yeah.
I don't think
It's a
we
problem.
I don't think I have the stomach for another phrase and category at this point.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's the problem with labels is that, there are so many people now. I mean, I think that everything essentially falls between all of these slots. They don't just fit right into it, and so it's
Mhm.
it's it's kind of irrelevant, but I mean, I just kind of wanted to get a take on what like Riot Girl is today, kind of.
Yeah.
So let's see. As far as getting into this album is concerned, I didn't really write down anything for any of these songs. The album starts with the Bikini Kill side and it starts with the song White Boy.
Mhm.
Um, as we were saying before, all of these songs are so blatant that it just like I don't even need to explain what these songs are. I mean, they're just like they're right there. I mean, if you look
Yeah.
up the lyrics, you'll read them and they're pretty clear.
Yeah.
So I don't really have anything to say about these songs until I get down to Rebel Girl,
Hmm.
which obviously it seems like it's the anthem for
Hmm.
almost the entire movement, let alone like this record.
Yep. Yeah.
Um, I had this long thing that I had written down about this song, like, this facts I had found about it, about the writing of it. But something else that I kind of want to mention about it was how I heard that Kathleen Hanna had said something along the lines of like sometimes when she sings this song, it makes her feel like she's wearing a cape.
Yeah.
Uh,
That makes sense.
yeah, and I imagine that meaning because of the power and the positivity that the song delivers. I mean, she feels like a superhuman, kind of
Hmm.
trying to I don't know, maybe crush barriers or whatever, bring all people together and so on and so forth. But I was curious, is there any connection that this statement that I just made to you makes to the context of the title track of your new album, Colossal?
Oh.
Because the lyrics for your song Colossal goes, the chorus says, "Where do you get where do you go to get colossal?" And I was wondering if that had any relevance or relation to like, this empowerment.
Hmm. Hmm. I don't know if that song necessarily totally connects to a sense of empowerment for myself. I think the reference that that is sort of getting at is more the presence that other people can have in your lives being almost larger than life and being so big that there can only be a way to describe it, which is colossal.
Hmm.
And I think that you know, the lyrics in that particular song, Ride, are a little, despite using that phrase, I think the actual album title, Colossal, is almost a little separate than what the lyrical content sort of implies with that one. But it's
Okay.
connected in a way. I think we were frankly, trying to kind of come up with something that signified the hugeness of this album. Like it's big. It's a really loud album. We did a little DJ night at a local bar a couple of weeks ago, and interspersed some songs off of this new album on it. And every time one came on, we had to like crank the volume down because it just blew everyone's ear. It just was
Yeah.
so loud compared to everything else on the mix.
Okay.
Um, and so we kind of wanted to like have this sort of cheeky, like maybe self-congratulatory kind of like, thing where it's like, oh yeah, this album's huge, it's colossal. And so I think in that way, maybe there is some empowerment in that where you can kind of, be a
Yeah.
little like strutting around kind of,
Okay.
cocky a little
Yeah.
bit.
Swagger, sure.
Yeah, swagger. Yeah, there you
Um,
go.
well, so that's funny because that you say that. So I only asked that because that maybe is some of the only lyrics that I've been able to process.
Mm,
Like as far as all of your music is concerned that I've listened to, um, I haven't found any printed lyrics for any of your songs, so I haven't been able to follow along and kind of like know what you're saying.
I will have to put them somewhere. I'm pretty proud of my lyrics, honestly.
Oh,
I don't
okay.
I don't talk about them too often, just because they are a little more like the Huggy Bear side of this split in that they're a little more poetic and a little more
Oh,
surreal and a little more weird.
I made that
Um,
connection too, so I'm happy that you're saying that.
yeah, totally. And so, I think for people that really like things in black and white and laid out really clearly with their lyrics. More power to them, but that's just not how I write. And so it's, it's kind of hard to talk about without being like, yeah, I write poetry. And so I think that kind of like,
Yeah,
is hard for people to totally talk about because I can't, there's not a lot of times I can be like, this song is about this.
sure.
Because it's about a whole lot of things. And sometimes I don't even fully know what it's about yet. So
Right.
yeah.
Okay. Well, so I mean, it just made it difficult for me to kind of understand these songs. I mean,
Hmm.
like just being able to listen to them the way that I have been able to, I don't know if I've been able to pull anything away lyrically that has been that like that kind of like pinpointed it being like, oh, I know what that song's about. Like I have none of that for any of your music,
Mhm.
which is
Mm.
fine, right? I mean, like
Mm.
it's, but I mean, so one question is, will your lyrics be printed in the new record?
Mhm. Yeah,
They will.
they're
Okay.
print
And
they're printed in all of our records, I think.
okay.
I don't think we have any that aren't physically printed. I think finding them online might be a little tricky, but I could
Yeah.
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 I should
Okay.
put them up on Bandcamp. I think Bandcamp has the ones for Stunner and Feral Coast on them.
Okay. I might not have looked at that, but
Yeah.
okay. Either way, I mean, I'll find them eventually, and I'll buy the records. As soon as I come across a whole bag of money. Um,
Yeah. I can also just send you the lyrics if you're interested in looking at them.
yeah, sure.
Mhm.
Oh, I mean that would be fine. I mean, I'd like to kind of get to know this stuff a little deeper, I guess.
Sure.
Um, as you were saying about the hugeness of this record, do you think that has anything to do with who was at the helm of it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, we recorded this one with Steve Albini in October of 2023.
Okay,
We're and as we're recording this, he passed away about a month or 2 months ago at this point. Really unexpectedly.
right,
It
tragic,
it's tragic, surprising, awful.
right,
We're, a whole number of things. We just have immense gratitude for the experience that we had with him in the studio. It was unlike anything I've ever experienced before. It was a total dream come true. It was every cliche that you could ask for with something like that.
yeah,
It was, yeah, it was great. And the final output is huge. It's so loud. It's exactly what I wanted it to sound like. He totally understood what the vision was and was able to pull it off. And yeah, that definitely is a reference to him giving it that the Albini treatment.
yeah, right, right. I mean,
Hmm.
so that's a great honor in a sense. I mean, like it's a kind of a reluctant honor, I guess you
Yeah,
can call it, because you happen to be one of these bands that will be one of the last bands he got to record.
yeah.
And I don't know what that looks like. I don't know like how many bands he had that were, like in progress prior to his passing. But I
Hmm.
feel like this is the first one I'm hearing about that's coming out after his
Mm.
loss, And it's
Hmm.
so sad. I mean, like he's such a like more than an icon. He's just more of like a this I don't know. I don't even know what to call it exactly, but he just had such an impact on everything that meant anything in music to
Yeah.
me. Like
Oh, 100%.
his
Same.
fingerprints is just on everything that means anything, in the rock music realm right now,
Yeah.
I think. Um, so much so that I bought his records and I can't even open it.
Yeah. Yep.
I got the last records and I'm like, I can't bring myself to open this right now.
Yeah. It was when I think my copy of To All Trains showed up less than a week after he passed. And I
Yeah,
just remember getting that package in the mail and was like, I don't know what to do with this. Like, yeah, it feels like you almost can't open it because there's a weird finality to it.
right.
But yeah, I mean, the music he made, the music he produced, the albums he produced, his ethics, his morals,
Yeah,
especially in recent years, and owning up to some of the mistakes he's made in the past. All of that is so, I mean, what a loss all of that is to have
yeah,
someone who is a well-known, well-respected icon in the scene and who was really doing good work and wanted to be better and wanted to have other people be better.
yeah.
I think, yeah, it's a huge, yeah, big loss, huge
Yeah.
loss.
So how did that come to be anyway? Like I mean, you obviously knew him. You obviously knew records that he has worked on, and you admired and respect those.
Mhm.
So what was the process like for you to actually get to that point where you either approached him
Mhm.
or, like how did that happen?
Yeah, I so it's been a bucket list thing for me and honestly for Danielle and my band too, to record with him. It's something that's always been in my mind as something I wanted to do. And I honestly think up until, this point in my life and with this album, I think I wasn't, it sounds a little woo-woo, but like I wasn't spiritually ready yet. I
Hmm.
think that Steve Albini is a person who notoriously will record anyone. Like he's not looking at bands and saying like, I don't like them so much, so I'm not going to do this one, but I'll allow this one. He's basically
Right.
like, if you pay me my rate, I'll record you. Like that's my job, and I'm going to do that. And so,
Right.
it's always been something I've known that like I could just pay him a bunch of money and he can record my band. But I think up until this particular album, I don't know if I was in a place where I felt like I had built up the total confidence to be able to go into the studio with someone like that and hold my own and ask for what I want and be able to express it um fully and have it be received in a mutually respectful way. And maybe that's like selling myself short a little bit. Like there could have been points in my past where I was ready for that, but I think the stars really aligned with making it be this album.
Hmm.
And just with the lineup that we have now with Jeremy playing bass and just kind of like settling into our sound a little bit more just made it, yeah, the way to go with this one. So basically it was really simple. I just reached out to the studio and was like, can we record in October? And they were like, yep, and then scheduled it. So we drove out to Chicago. We stayed a week at an Airbnb down the street from the studio. Um, and then we just, yeah, ripped it out over the course of 5 days, 12, 13-hour days a piece, but just did the whole darn thing.
Yeah. So, what was, this is going to be a tough question, but I mean, like, what do you think was the greatest takeaway from that experience?
Mhm. I think the greatest takeaway from that experience was feeling like I was working with someone who has been so immensely impactful and influential in my life as a peer. It didn't feel like I was, there was a moment of starstruck at the beginning, but during the entire session, I really felt like he had our best interest in mind. He was willing to hear us out, but also offer suggestions that didn't feel like they were kind of bulldozing our ideas, which, kind of can tend to happen sometimes when you're recording and someone, thinks that they can shift things around on you a little bit.
Sure. Or he knows better than you, nothing like that.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like it felt like he was making sure we felt good about everything. Um, he would he would take a song and be like, you know what I think this song needs is this. And it didn't feel like, oh, we should be doing this differently because this doesn't sound good. He's like, I want to serve the song and make the song better. And this is how I think we can do that. And just working with someone like that on a personal, like two colleagues working together way was just like
Hmm.
awesome. Like that's just everything. It was everything. Like to feel like I wasn't fighting and to feel like I wasn't like too nervous to be able to express, what we needed or that like we we felt like we were imposters or something. Like we just didn't have those moments at all. So honestly, it was like a boost to self-esteem, like a big like like this feels really good for me personally to be in the space and like to be able to do this with this person. And I'm so happy with the output. The very last day we were listening to the full run through of the album, and there's a part in the song Load where it switches from this kind of beginning uh it's just guitar and me singing, and then we got a trumpet player to come in and do this like backup trumpet part, and
Right.
there's a part where that cuts out and like the full band like kicks in. And when we were listening to it as the four of us, my three bandmates and Steve in his studio, and that part kicked in, I just started sobbing. Like it just was like such an emotional release to be like this person and this environment and this experience and like everything all at once was just like so just everything like overwhelming. And then to hear the song the way it sounds, knowing that like I wrote that, is still really special despite having written 12 albums in my life. Like that still had this
Right.
that huge like, oh my God, we did it, kind of feeling. So yeah,
Yeah.
it was pretty
That's
cool.
amazing. It really is. It's wow. it's just such a weird experience. I mean, it's just going to be something that's going to be with you forever, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
so I have to like speak for you. It's just like you must be so thankful for being able to get that experience before he left this earth.
Yes, 100%. I
Yeah.
just, yeah, such gratitude to be able to do that. I can't even really put it into words. Yeah.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, we won't, beat that dead horse then. That is the worst pun ever. I'm like, all
I
right.
get it.
I wanted to move on and maybe talk about the next song, Out of Me.
Mhm.
So, listening to this album, I feel like Rebel Girl and this song, Out of Me, seem to be the anthemic ones. Like they're the whether you want to consider them the biggest hit or like the
Mhm.
songs with the most impact. It looks seem like these two are the ones on this side, I think.
Mhm.
So if you had written these songs, which would be your choice to close with?
Like on an album or at a
No,
show.
if you were playing, if you wrote these songs and they were in
Mhm.
your catalog and you
Mhm.
were going to use one of them to close, which one would it be?
I mean, it would have to be Rebel Girl just because I know the cultural context of that song is so much bigger than Out of Me. I
Hmm.
think that it's a banger. It's a show ender. It's a showstopper. It's an everyone sing along kind of song.
Yeah.
I kind of see Out of Me as more like a mournful ballad than a bang, like kind of an
Yeah.
anthem.
Right.
Which is, in itself kind of anthemic, but
Yeah.
it feels like for a really like solid like, oh yeah, we just knocked it out of the park, then that's got to be like that's a Rebel Girl set. That's how it's got to end.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because I mean, I guess Out of Me kind of to me feels kind of like a Where Is My Mind?
Oh, totally. Yeah, that's really good. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
So I mean, it
Hmm.
has like a feeling of like maybe like I could see it as a closer only because not because it's intense,
Hmm.
but because maybe almost it's that um kind of like letting you down gently as opposed
Mm,
to going out with a big bang.
yeah. Well, maybe it would be the pre-encore finisher and then come
Mm,
back on stage, do Rebel Girl, and
yeah,
everyone just loses their mind and then goes home. I
right.
think that would be
Okay.
that would be where it's at.
You are obviously the consummate professional.
Just sort of.
Yeah. Um, all right, so then let's move on to the next side, to the Huggy Bear side.
Hmm.
Um, so let's see. The first song from Huggy Bear is Jupiter Re-Entry,
Hmm.
which upon a closer listen and reading along with some of the lyrics that I was able to find, it's definitely a disturbing one.
Hmm. Yes.
Um, but let's see, what I have here is that I've heard a good portion of your catalog at this point.
Hmm.
Um, but have you done anything like this dark?
Yeah. I think, I'm referencing those lyrics right now as well.
Oh yeah, it's pretty bad.
I mean, this dark.
Because even musically, like lyrically, it's certainly dark, but I mean, I think
Hmm.
musically, it's got a very I don't know if like a minor tone is the appropriate description,
Hmm.
but I mean, it definitely has a eerie feel.
It's almost sinister, right?
Yeah.
Like it kind of has this creeping guitar part, like creepy crawly guitar part.
Mm,
But almost there's something about honestly, this whole side of the album, there are kind of these like weird shoegaze elements that kind of pop in and out. And I think this song kind of has that in there too, where it's almost like this wash of noise and like slight drony, but like also with, still chords and melodies and stuff like that. But content to music, yeah, this is a pretty dark song. I think I certainly have songs that are dark like this, but not in the same way. I think that there
yeah.
are, looking at the lyrics to this feels like you could kind of guess what what this song is about. Like you know,
Yeah.
maybe it's not like a perfect like explanation, but you get the general idea that there's like some pain involved, some history involved. Um,
Right.
and so, you know, I don't think that those are things that I would shy away from writing, but I don't even know if like any of my lyrics you could point at them and say like this is the disturbing lyric right here.
Sure, sure.
I think maybe I could, but I don't know if, you know, the average Joe listening to our album
I
would
couldn't.
necessarily be able to. Yeah,
I wouldn't
there you
be able
go.
to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the average James. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Today I listened to Cadet, the
Hmm.
album that Cadet put out. So that was the only example of like there was a song on that album that I was just like, this is probably the darkest I've heard
Mm.
Laura get so far.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
was after listening to Baby Guts, your solo record. I was just like, as far as the feel of this song is concerned, not saying lyrically,
Hmm.
there was something on there that was pretty dark.
Yeah. I was in a very bad relationship and like social and mental health place during that album.
Oh,
And
okay.
so that does not surprise me that there would be a really dark one on there. That was a pretty yeah, that was like an actual like, oh man, I am like in my feels in this album in a
Okay.
way that I don't think the other ones have really gotten into quite so dark territory. That's probably the
Hmm.
darkest one right there.
Okay. Well,
Yeah,
I picked up on it.
it works.
I was
Yeah.
looking for it.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
Um, let's see. So, I mean, that's all I have for that song.
Mhm.
The next song I have anything for is Below Dry.
Okay.
So I have this quote from Gordon Mokes. He was a member of the band Block Party.
Oh, sure.
So he wrote an article in The Guardian that was called Huggy Bear a Tribute. So it
Mm.
was all about his experience with Huggy Bear, I guess. So it says,
Hmm.
quote, "It was so simple, so ugly, so daring. What those 2 minutes of feedback and scruffy drums warned of was a new language of rock and roll that was dangerous, alluring,
Mm.
and turned everything that had come before on its head."
Hmm.
So my question for you is, what could you hope some might say about your new album, Colossal?
Cool. Uh, hmm.
Well, clearly that it's big.
Yeah. Um, I think, you know, something about how it's able to touch on a lot of different elements without feeling like it's just a kind of like an idea dump, if that makes sense. Like I
Hmm.
think having a range on this album in terms of like heaviness and softness and poppiness and inaccessibility, um and I think someone noting that I think would be I think that would be a good thing to pick up on with this album because I really do think we hit a lot of different musical part points with this
Yeah.
album. Our next single that's coming out this week is called High Pile, and that's the one that's it says the word hallelujah in it. That's the one that people can reference by the lyrics will go to waste while singing hallelujah. That is probably one of the more like pretty songs we've written, and
Hmm.
at least the, you know, the beginning part of it and feels a lot more poppy and a lot more accessible. The guitar is clean and not distorted. Um,
Hmm.
but then, you know, on the same hand, we've got Load, which totally devolves into chaos and loudness at the end of it. So I think, yeah, identifying that kind of range of this album.
Dynamics.
Yeah, dynamics. Yeah.
Yeah. No, yeah, I can hear that for sure.
Mhm.
I mean, it's a great record. I told you before. I mean, especially considering what I know now about your back catalog and kind of your progression as a musician from some of your earliest works to now.
Mhm.
Um, I don't think there's anything I love more about like when I find like a band or a musician that I like, w- but to see the progression of like what they're capable of.
Mm.
So,
Mhm.
I mean, like, you know, this very well, your album Colossal very well could be a starting point for a lot of people. So they might not be able to. see a progression, because they might not necessarily know your other bands and some of your other
Mhm.
work.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I guess hopefully that's something that will come through, as far as like, just being a good record as it is, as it's kind of a standalone.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if when you were looking at Baby Gut stuff, if you came across this at all, but we are on TikTok a lot. The
Still?
kids,
What?
the
Oh, they
kids,
use your music.
they use our music on TikTok.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And so it'll be like these cool young goth punk kids like doing a like get ready for me, or get ready with me video for the day, and they like put on their makeup or like try on their outfits or whatever, just with like Baby Guts in the background. And I just like, to me, I don't have TikTok. I didn't know about this until my drummer Danielle showed it to me. Just the huge array of these like weird cool kids
Uh-huh.
with Baby Guts on their TikToks, and it just, that's everything. Like if that's who is following my music, if that's who finds me, like those are my people. That's who I love. That's who I want. I love the freaks. I love the ones who don't totally fit in. I love the queer kids who are, wearing huge, eyeliner and shaving their eyebrows off. Like those are just like, the gratitude I have for them finding a project that I had almost 20 years ago and relating to it is
Mhm.
just, that's everything. That's all I ever want out of playing music is people
Yeah.
like that to feel like they're seen and that they're valid. Yeah. And so that, to me, like if there was a version of that with this album, forget about it. Like that would be amazing. Like that, it's just, that's why I play music. And I'm
Yeah.
hoping that like I can
To get
still
into
kind of,
TikTok.
yeah, exactly.
All
Yeah,
about
no,
TikTok these days.
I know. I'll just take whatever the current social media like popular app is, and as long as I'm on it, like I'm
Uh-huh.
golden.
Do you see a lot of like choreography for this album?
No, I don't. Wish I did, because I love dancing and like love aerobics and have taught dance classes and
Huh.
stuff. And I think that like physicality and doing, choreography and dancing is like a super fun part of music that doesn't often come into the punk scene, which makes sense. But
Hmm.
wow, I would love some choreography. That would be very fun. I'll just have to do my own.
Yeah, and I hope to see it on TikTok. Perfect.
Oh, you will, yes.
You advertising your own album with your own music, dancing to it.
Exactly. Exactly. Oh, perfect.
No
This
shame.
is
No
the
shame these
this is
days.
the image building that we need these days.
Yeah. All right. So let's see. After that, the next song from Huggy Bear is a new song.
Hmm.
No idea what the song is about.
Hmm.
Um, but what struck me upon listening to it is, I was wondering, is it more important to sing with feeling or meaning?
I don't really see those two things as being separate.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
If you mean it, you're gonna feel it. You're gonna kind
if,
of, it's gonna convey.
yeah. Yeah. And I almost think you can't really fake it. If you're not feeling it, it doesn't come across like you mean it. And
Right.
so I don't know. I always feel, I mean, you can see pictures of me where I take some good live photos, but a lot of them are just like I am making a face because I am just like,
Yeah.
ugh, pulling it out of me.
Right.
And so I wouldn't, I'm truly singing with feeling, and I wouldn't be doing that if I didn't mean
Right.
everything that I said. So I'm sure
Hmm.
some people do, but that's not for me. I need to resonate with it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, maybe is it like what comes first? Is it the words or the melody?
I think generally the melody will come first, and the lyrics will kind of come in a parallel fashion. Like I'll probably be conceptually writing kind of like the idea of how I want something to come across, but when the melody is there, you kind of have to tweak the way you enunciate certain things, or filler words go in this way, or that kind of thing. So it's, yeah, I would say the melody coming with the majority of the initial songwriting is usually how I end up doing it.
Hmm. Okay. One thing I was thinking about, I didn't write this down, but you know, I was doing a lot of research about you and the bands that you've been in. I noticed that for Kitten Forever, you you kind of jumped around,
Mhm.
didn't
Yep.
you? You did bass primarily, but you
At
also did
first,
drums.
yep, at first, for like the first, I think probably almost 10 years of the band, I just played bass. And we all just kind of sat on our own instruments like bass, drums, and vocals. But then when we were working on our double 7-inch pressure, we started switching instruments. And because we realized like Corey and I knew how to play drums, bass, and we could sing. Liz knew how to play bass from another band that she was in. And so we
Mhm.
started writing it into the songs to be able to switch not only throughout, the album, but actually physically while we were playing live. Because the worst thing in the world is when you see a band who like plays a really ripping song and then they're like, okay, we're gonna switch instruments now. And it's just like that dead silence of like them taking their guitar off and like trading it, and the guitars kind of like smash into each other, and then you kind of like put them back on and make sure you're in tune and like all this stuff. And we just were like, let's just not do that and just like do these like wild transitions where we're clapping or one of us is still playing and the other two are switching. So speaking of choreography, like that, there was a lot of choreography in Kitten Forever to make that happen live.
Hmm.
But yes, I
Okay.
played everything in that one
Yeah.
too. Yeah.
Well, so what do you like more?
Out of those three instruments, about of like anything.
Well, I mean, I guess you play everything.
Yeah. So in Kitten Forever, I liked playing bass and singing. I didn't really like playing drums very much. It's not my thing.
Oh, okay.
I just don't think I just don't feel very passionate about it. I had fun doing it, but it was not something that I felt like, wow, I really want to play drums more. Like this is great. Like that's not really a thing.
Okay.
I do feel like my heart is with bass, weirdly, even though I play guitar in Scrunchies and I have in all, Baby Guts and Cadet, but I really just love the primalness of bass guitar and like
Hmm.
how hard it's like hard to play and it's thick and like just like I just really I like that. I kind of vibe with that a lot, but I love playing guitar too, so I'm not
Okay.
too beat up about it.
Yeah. So no switching coming soon for with scrunchies?
Nah, nah,
No, just stick to what you
nah.
know. Just
I'm
stick to
just
what
gonna
you do.
post up with what I got. Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. So I wanted to skip down the song Hopscotch. I don't have
Mhm.
anything to say about this song, but I just think it's hilarious because every time I hear it, I just want to go hopscotch.
Hope Scorch, yes, definitely.
Hopscotch.
Yep,
Um, that's all I have for that song.
that's good.
Um, skipping down to the end, February 14th. I couldn't even get lyrics for this song. Like there's
Hmm.
nothing about the song whatsoever. But I would say that there was something that I noticed about it by listening to it was that it seems that like the beauty of having male female vocal dynamics in that band was that in this song they actually uh kind of like wrote out an argument like a domestic abuse
Hmm.
situation, like where they're
Yeah.
just like insulting and like just hating on one another. and
Hmm.
it's just
Yeah.
it's really funny to hear them say these things. Like some of the things they say are just kind of like humorous, but I mean
Yeah.
like I understand that from like maybe the feminist perspective that the song is coming from. It's much more serious than that. It's kind of maybe more of a kind of a cultural criticism on that situation.
Hmm.
um
Hmm.
but it is hilarious.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a clever thing to put on an album, honestly. It's yeah, like you said, it's pretty intense. It's a statement to put something like that on there. And, I because there's such an impossible band to figure out, what were you saying with that? Like what is your intention with this one? You can
Hmm.
kind of just pull from it what you get out of it, whether it's like a cultural critique, whether it's a feminist sort of retelling of this sort of narrative. It's also just I mean, I think just having something like that feels very like subversive and intense. And I think that there's something cheeky about putting that on an album and saying, here's what we're presenting to the world as a part of our music. And then you get this too. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about it, but I can appreciate the like artistic potentiality of doing something like that. And I think,
Yeah.
there's still a lot of I think uh Kendrick Lamar just released an album last year that kind of had the same, domestic kind of fight track on it too. And so
Oh, okay.
that's not something that it exists in this sphere of 1994 punk bands or whatever. So
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, there was something I thought about by the time I got to the end of this record, which was I thought this song was so energetic and powerful, and even that I feel Huggy Bear outdoes Bikini Kill in a way. Like I think
Mhm.
between the sides of this record. Not to discredit Bikini Kill. I mean, I think that what they do is different, and I think that it's
Mhm.
equally powerful and resonant. But just saying, like, if both sides of this record was a race, Huggy Bear won.
I agree, honestly. I like the Huggy Bear side a lot more than the Bikini Kill side. To be honest, like the tracks on the Bikini Kill side of this, they're really impactful to my life and amazing and were really important to me at a certain point. But I think when I look at the whole of Bikini Kill's catalog, these were not the songs that like really got me into them. Those
Mm,
would be the ones on their album Pussy Whipped. Like that album to me was like that's top tier stuff.
okay.
It's produced. I like the production a lot better. It's still really noisy and messy, but it's just I don't know. It doesn't feel as like unlistenable.
Yeah, okay.
I I don't know if I would be able to listen to this Bikini Kill side anymore at this point in my life. I mean, I would just, because I could do a deep dive exploring it again as an adult, but it's it served a very specific purpose for that time in my life and for a lot of other people's times in their life. It impacts different people different ways long term. But I think for that side, it's not something where I'm like excited to listen to those songs a ton anymore.
Yeah. Okay.
But the Huggy Bear stuff, I kind of feel like I could just that's to me, that's just I could always listen to that. Like it feels like a little timeless. It feels clever. It feels unique. The vocals are cool. The way the drums sound is amazing. Like
Hmm.
I love the recording quality of it, even though I know it's not good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Okay.
think that I agree. That gets my vote out of the two sides of this one.
Okay. Something else about this record and maybe the Huggy Bear you know, influence over it is that what led me to believe, like to even say that the Huggy Bear side just seems like it's kind of more interesting and kind of like more energetic is like I think it has something to do with the fact that Huggy Bear has more voices backing them.
Yeah, totally.
Um, and I was wondering, like, is that maybe that was something that influenced you? I'm not sure if you're like you're conscious of that or aware of it, but like, is that why you usually have other leads or backup on the projects that you work on? There's usually always like it seems like there's always like kind of two lead singers for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I really like having more than one vocal on an album, and I'm really lucky in that all of the bandmates that I've had are really good at being my counterpart of my my voice. I think even Taylor in Baby Guts, the way he screamed was really complimentary to the way that I screamed.
Hmm.
Kitten Forever, we obviously really, knocked it out of the park with the cheerleader kind of, riot girl vocals and all fitting together like that. But then Danielle is like actually just an incredible singer. Like she's maybe more technically proficient than I am. She is at music too. She's a really good skilled musician in those ways. But I love the sound of her voice and the way that it sounds with my voice. And I think yeah, having bands like Huggy Bear who really layered those things expertly is really influential to how how I approach writing songs and having more than one vocal on them.
Hmm. Yeah, because I find it to just have so much more power. It's so much
Mm,
more exciting, you know, and
I think so
like
too.
Yeah. Because
Plus, it's
there's so much.
just,
I guess there's so much you can do, right?
yep. And it's fun to sing with your friends, honestly. Like, I think it's easy to kind of get caught up in the like, I'm having this, this profound thought about like what it means to create these dynamics with two vocals. And I am having that profound thought and I agree with that. And I just really like singing with my friends and it's fun. So
Yeah.
I think, just I try to keep in mind that like we do little things like that because they're joyful and they're a fun thing to
Yeah.
do. They
Yeah.
sound
I
good.
think the fun kind of carries over. It's makes it more evident on the music.
Hmm.
Um, so I don't have much to kind of close this out on. I think we touched on it a little bit earlier about how I was asking you if you think like Huggy Bear just wanted to disappear, like if like they don't want to be known because, Bikini Kill has reissued this record and they've only reissued their portion because they supposedly couldn't get the rights to the Huggy Bear material,
Hmm.
which like that's why I think I was kind of asking that is just like if this band cares about their legacy or cares about their catalog at all and wants people to hear what it was, regardless of the context that the media kind of like, pushed on them,
Hmm.
or uh, manipulated to fit their own narrative or whatever it was that they were experiencing for their media blackout. I mean, why not allow the music to get put out?
Hmm. I wonder if that's, there's a couple different reasons for that. One of which being sometimes it's really hard to revisit something that you did 30 years ago. And especially if it's something that feels a little out of your hands. Like if
Mm,
Bikini Kill is re-releasing some of these songs, uh having having the choice to do that on your own would maybe produce a certain outcome, but sometimes, I mean, not that I'm saying they wouldn't trust Bikini Kill to do it right, but they sometimes with labels and stuff, you see the writing on the wall and you just totally don't know if it's going to blow up in your face or if they're going to, make a statement that you don't stand by, but your name is tied to them, like anything like that. I can see it opening up a whole can of worms like that for some bands.
mm,
And so, I do wonder if that was one of the things. I also just wonder if Bikini Kill really fought that hard to have them re-release it together. It kind of feels like I don't know, what their relationship with them panned out to be. I don't know if they would see any benefit or like financial or personal to be able to re-release this album together. But either way, it makes it kind of feel like this album is really special to own and it's really special to have exist because it wasn't re-released. It wasn't, rehashed into the ground. It wasn't remastered, as so many
yeah.
things kind of end up being. It's a time capsule of a very specific moment in time in the history of punk, in the history of women in punk, in the history of queer people in punk and happening in two different countries at once. And I think that, we don't have a lot of artifacts like that anymore.
Mm,
And it's exciting that this is still one that I get to hold in my hands and I get to, reflect on and there hasn't been a refreshing of it. And so it stays what it is. And there's something kind of cool in that. I mean, I'm not a purist by any
yeah.
means, but I think it's a cool thing to have.
Right. Yeah. Okay. I'm just because I don't know. Like I feel in the research that I had done for this album and to have this discussion with you, there was so much like the books that I had read. I was reading Rebel Girl. I was reading Girls to the Front. A lot of stuff online, and it just
Mhm.
seems like every direction that I was turning into to find out more about these bands and these songs. Uh, there was so much like pressure from the media on them, right? And you had kind of touched on this a little bit, but I mean, from both of them kind of like participating in these media blackouts. I mean, I'm just kind of curious, like I was gonna ask you like if you think like the media helps or hurts artists these days, like more so in one direction or another.
Mhm.
But I'm curious if like maybe the question is more along the lines of do you experience anything through media or have you experienced anything through media in your, throughout your career that seemed negative to you, or that is there something you feel like you need to push back against?
Mm. Like, yes and no. I think media can be really frustrating because it's very, very easy for them to take the context out of anything that you're saying while still appearing to do their due diligence. I've had a number of articles written about my bands or my, my work that have misconstrued certain things I've said, or maybe, you know, presented something in a way that like I didn't really feel like was genuine to what I was trying to get across. And so, there's what you
Mm,
say to the media, and then there's what they interpret you saying. And we just had this happen a couple of days ago. We did an interview with a national organization who interviewed me and a couple other people in Minneapolis about the Minneapolis punk scene. And they had a really thoughtful interview with like probably half a dozen questions about what it's been like growing up in the punk scene, how the punk scene has evolved over the past number of years, what sets Minneapolis apart. And it was it felt like a really good interview. We answered really well. We talked about, some incidents that have happened in Minneapolis over the past couple of years that have been really impactful to the music community. And then they put it out after you send like all these beautiful, like really thoughtful answers, and they just use the tiniest blurb. And then everyone's like, well, why didn't you talk about this or what? It's kind
mm,
of like that thing where you do your darndest, and
uh,
you can't really trust that someone's gonna necessarily portray you the way that you could when you are directly speaking to someone. So
right.
yeah. So I don't know. I mean, it's a love-hate thing. We all, artists are always going to have a love-hate thing with media. It's word of mouth at the end of the day, and it's not everybody's yeah, not everyone has your best interest in mind for that either. So yeah.
Mm, okay. Well, I'll do my damnedest to make you look the best that I can through this outlet that I
Thanks.
have here. But in all actuality, I mean, it's been really pleasant speaking with you.
Yeah, yeah, it's been great. Yeah, this has been a really fun conversation, and it let me kind of reflect on an album that I haven't really thought about in a while, but was the first one that came into my mind as being a pretty impactful album for being the kind of musician that I am.
Yeah, I mean, I think I can see a lot of the connections for a number of different reasons. I think it's I kind of have to pat myself on the back every now and then when I can, when I start to hear it, like I think that we've obviously been over the course of this conversation acknowledged some of the connections that I was kind of noticing as I was like listening and reading and stuff. So I think that it was a good choice for that
Yeah.
reason because it had to have a pretty profound impact on you.
Yeah.
So
And I'm appreciative that you saw that. I think, that's it isn't the most blatant thing laid out right in front of you, but and I know I gave you a tricky one. I know it's like even hard to find the music for this online. None of Huggy Bear's stuff is streaming anywhere.
yeah, not
You
really. It's
probably
just
found
on
it like on
YouTube.
YouTube. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I kind of appreciate you going down the rabbit hole with me on this weird kind of pseudo obscure
Yeah. No,
punk
no
rock
problem. I mean,
artifact.
it's fun. It's fun to a degree. I mean, it was stressful because I definitely, kind of hold myself to a certain standard where I'm just like, I'm very scared to try to have this conversation right now. But no, but it turned out great. And it's
Hey,
so nice to get to
that's
meet you.
punk for you. You got to just try it and make it happen. But yeah, it
That's
was really great to meet you too. This was fun.
yeah. So I see that you're going out on tour soon.
Yep, we are
So a
going
short
out
one.
east. Yes. 2 weeks actually. We got the rest of the dates pinned down. So we are
Oh,
going to
okay.
be um going through Chicago, Philly, Pittsburgh, Richmond, Virginia, Louisville, Memphis, St. Louis, New York City, Philly, if I didn't already say that.
Hmm.
And I think that's it. Yeah. So we're
Okay.
doing a 2 weeks kind of out to the East Coast and back again. Oh, in Kansas City as well, and Madison. So yeah,
Oh, okay.
we're gonna be out on the road at the beginning of September.
Okay.
I know that like feminist, loud, angry punk isn't everybody's cup of tea, but I like having conversations about it. And I'm appreciative that you were willing to go down that road too.
Yeah, no problem. It scares me. It scares me a little bit.
Yeah,
I get
that's
intimidated.
okay.
It's
Yeah.
doing its job.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. The women win again.
That's right. Yes, I will cower in fear. I will... And
Perfect.
respect.
Then my job is done here.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Laura.
Thank you.